Hey, welcome back to About the Labor podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, not back here with my guy Drew Mahowald. Guy is still on vacation, currently suffering from some severe UV ray attacks. So I have, instead of him, a guy that absolutely makes me laugh, literally just by his voice inflection, a guy that I am very excited to have on the show. I think it's going to be a lot of fun today, Mr. Sam Newman. If you don't know him, this is what he's going to do right now. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself. And the one thing that I always give for people that are we're introducing here, you got to give us something. You got to give us something weird, right? I don't want the basic. Tell me your social media. Tell me what you're doing right now. I want to know. Obviously, you're a VT guy, but I want to know something strange about Sam Newman, something that the masses don't know anything about.
Sure. I can do that. I've been with VT for a little over a year, I think, now, and having a great time and enjoying doing the roundtables and all stuff like that. Big fan of the podcast, which I was here under better circumstances because we were very worried about Drew. And I don't know which way this thing's going to go. Hopefully there's not a hospital in his future, and he can just overcome with the yellow. But weird thing about me, I would say that I was a Vikings ball boy when I was a kid for a brief time. And brief time, I mean not even a whole, season. It was, part of training camp.
Who was the coach? Who was the coach when you were the ball boy?
Mike Tice. It was the Mike Tice era. I think I was, 12 or 13. And then I made it a couple weeks, I think, then I'm like, this sucks, I'm leaving. It sucked.
Off of that, most interesting interaction you had with some sort of Vikings personnel, player, equipment manager, whoever it was, strangest interaction you remember, something that kind of comes to your head right away?
Sure. I was working with the running backs group, so it was mostly that. And so the ones I remembered most were Michael Bennett. I was a big Michael Bennett fan at the time as a kid, so that was awesome. He was a really nice guy, called me Samski. And then Mo Williams, super nice veteran. And then this guy, Doug Chapman, who is a total butthole to me, and I will never forgive him.
Do I have to bleep butthole? I'll check with Brett on that.
Okay.
All right, guys, let's hop into the real show here. We have kind of a tentative plan here, so I'm not even going to break it down ahead of time. We're just going to jump straight into it. First thing first, piece of news for today. Not massive news by any means, but the Vikings did sign a new player. Will Sutton is the guy. He's listed as a defensive end. That's because he's coming from a 3-4 scheme with Vic Fangio in Chicago. So in a 4-3 scheme, this is a guy that can line up the 1 tech, he can line up at the 3 tech. He's not really suited well for the 3-4 defense. Vic Fangio himself talked a little bit about how he prefers guys who are about 20 pounds heavier and guys that can line up at that 5T spot. Kind of, you think about the guys like, who was that? Eric Armstead. That's the type of guy that Vic Fangio is looking for. This is not Will Sutton, but he projects very well in the Vikings defense because he has so much versatility on the interior line. Like I said, he can be a 3 tech, he can be a nose, 1 tech, 5 tech. He can kind of split all over the place. So this is a guy that kind of under the radar. I think it's someone to be excited about. Sam, obviously NFC North guy, you have some familiarity with him. What's your take on Mr. Billy Sutton?
Yeah, I remember when the Bears drafted him, and I think obviously the talent's there for a third-round draft pick. And I did see that he'd played a fair amount of nose tackle before, so initially my thought was maybe this is Linval insurance. Right, but then you talk about that versatility. Really, I think that's what they're looking for, a guy that can I don't know how much playing time he's going to see in there if everybody's healthy, but I think he's kind of like a good case scenario for him might be like the Everett Lindsay of the defensive line, some guy who can just really line up wherever, plug in wherever, and can sort of just give you good depth at multiple positions while only taking up one roster spot. I don't know. What do you think?
Absolutely. This is a guy that has, in my opinion, coming off of, this is going to be his 4th year in the league, so still a very high upside player. There's room to grow. He's got a big frame. He can put on some mass. His weight fluctuation will that's something to watch in terms of what position will be his main gig. I would assume right now that he's punching in at a nose tackle spot because that is kind of the deficiency on that interior line. After bringing in Jaleel Johnson and Detone Jones, those guys are both projected as at least immediately as 3 techniques. So I would assume this is a guy that's probably backing up Linval, and that probably signals the end of the Shamar Stefan era. Some of you probably don't even know that era began. So to some degree, that's probably a good thing. The reason why I'm saying this is simply because Shamar Stefan is a strictly nose tackle guy. If you watched the D-line last year at all, you noticed that when he got put into a pass rushing role, he's a liability in a pass rushing situation. So that's a real problem when he's not filling his gaps. That's why I love this Will Sutton signing, because it eliminates guys like him, and versatility. Spielman and Zimmer have not shut up with that term all off season. I think this is a big under the radar signing because of that, his ability to do a lot of different things in Mike Zimmer's defense.
Yeah, Shamar Stefan, we hardly knew ye. I kept waiting for that to happen, and it just never did.
7th round pick, stuck around a couple of years. You got to give it to him. I believe he will have 3 years in the league, so he's looking at retirement for the rest of his years just for hitting that bar. So good for Shamar Stefan. Obviously he hasn't been cut yet. This is just a projection, kind of my assumption based off of my understanding of what Mr. Sutton can do and what the Vikings defense is looking towards next year. The other guy here, the guy that Jordan and I wanted to talk about him on the last show, but we didn't feel comfortable breaking him down, and that's something that you can always expect from the About the Labor podcast. We're not going to talk about something we don't know anything about. So, Freddie Tagaloa, I'm not sure. It sounds Hawaiian to me, so I'm going to kind of go with that. This is a big guard, 6'8", monstrous human being, and he's a left guard from Arizona. I'll be completely honest with you guys. I had no idea who he was coming out in the draft. I didn't know his draft profile. I don't believe that even Lance Zierlein, the guy that drops all those NFL.com draft profiles you see people steal stuff on Twitter from, he didn't even have one there. That's why you got nothing on Twitter when he signed, because nobody had Lance Zierlein to refer to. So keep that in mind, by the way. But from what I watched 2 games for him. The main one that I watched that I thought he was very impressive against was against Washington. It's a high-profile team, high-profile defense. You think about the players that just came out of there. Sidney Jones, Kevin King, Budda Baker, bunch of high, talented players, and he performed very well. The number one thing, and this should probably come as no surprise after I just said he's a 6'8", about 340-pound dude, this dude can set an anchor like nobody's business, and it's very visible. And when I say an anchor, for anyone that doesn't understand that term, I know it's kind of football speak, and there might be some question marks as to what that means. That literally just means stepping your back foot down into the ground and literally not moving, allowing yourself to push forward off of that back foot. And because of his size, because of his high upper body strength, at least that's from what I can see on film, long arms, he can push back, and you can literally see him holding strong. So that's one big thing. That's a high upside thing to me for him. My issue with him, immediately, finesse. This dude is slow off the snap. I'm not sure if that's a recognition issue, because like I said, didn't watch enough snaps to really see the consistency there, but I'm concerned about his ability to handle finesse. He's kind of the opposite of Danny Isidora in that he's very strong and he can handle that power rush and those, the guys like Linval Joseph, for example, that are going to come at him with a bull rush technique. He can handle that. But the Sharif Floyd's of the world, that quick snap off the line where it seems like he's, the get off is so quick that he's actually beating the ball, that's a problem. And I broke down some basic film clips. There's one play against, I can't remember which team it was specifically, but it's literally like he didn't even get out of his stance. The guy was in the backfield. So that's an issue, and that's the reason why he's an undrafted free agent. So, Sam, as a Vikings guy, offensive line, you love Ham, you love Big Ham. Mm-hmm. This is a full pounder here in terms of Ham projectiles. What are you seeing? What do you think about this guy?
He's economy size, economy size, and I love it. He's one of those hams you get at Costco, and honestly, just the size alone is intriguing. And like you said, it's a real strong guy, and the Vikings need. Clearly, they saw enough in him to at least want to get a longer look, and. In terms of offensive line, I think that's very wise of them to do whenever they feel compelled. And like you said, we're talking undrafted free agents at this point. There's going to be some deficiencies. Yeah, there's going to be some holes. And I think you just got to kind of take that for what it is. And so we'll see, man. I don't think there's a firm grip on a lot of, especially those second string spots on the offensive line.
A lot of spots available on that backside of the offensive line for sure.
So camp competition alone will be a bonus.
It's interesting because, if you guys listen to the VT Roundtable, and you should if you're not, we talked a lot about Dan Skipper on one particular episode, and the reason why we liked Dan Skipper so much is because that guy was a 6'10", 360-pound absolute monster, power forward type guy. And this is the same type of player where he's got the physical frame. You just wonder if his athleticism, which he's a good pole blocker, so he has that lateral agility. You just wonder if he has the athleticism to move his feet quick enough to get in front of a stunt, for example, on the interior offensive line. That is the big question mark here. But what I said on the opposite side, Fedi Odenigbo, or however you pronounce it, Io, guy with one skill, tremendous skill, that you hope to develop another one. This is a very similar circumstance here. This guy can handle power. He's got that one on lock. You got to develop another skill, and if he can develop that in 3 months, you could be looking at a backup spot. Otherwise, this is a guy that projects very well in the practice squad simply because of the upside based on his size alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just like you said, you have that one skill, and as an NFL player, if that skill is strong enough, that can make you stick around long enough to be able to learn a different skill.
You hope Tony Sperano can teach him something, right?
Right. The concern, of course, is that with a guy, we're talking about the cliche from jumping to the college to the pros is always speed of the game, and you just hope he's not. It's not such a big leap for him that he literally can't
especially
operate.
When we're talking about athleticism, right?
Exactly, because everybody's so darn athletic.
If you're having trouble with athletic interior 3 techniques at the college level, playing at Arizona's level of competition, so Pac-12, Pac-10 type stuff, you're going to have a real problem with Gino Atkins when you see Cincinnati. That's going to be a real problem. So, in my opinion, at this point, he's not a guy that is a 53-man roster candidate unless he's able to really establish himself. And I'm not putting it past him by any means because, again, I haven't seen enough to really have a defined take here. I'm just kind of telling you what I see. And if he shows up in camp and he's fundamental, works hard, Sperano teaches him something, Sperano finally does his job with this offensive line. I mean, this is a guy that has... I don't want to say he has an unlimited ceiling. I think that you could probably see his ceiling, but he's definitely better in terms of the future than like a guy like Jeremiah Searles, in my opinion. I know I hate on Jeremiah Searles all the time, but I really believe that. So
what is that all about? I thought all things considered last year, he did an okay job filling in. Where does the Jeremiah Searles? Is it a measurables thing, or
no,
what?
It stems back it straight up, and this is so unfair of me. But it stems back from jumping the snap on the 2-point conversion to tie the game.
Oh, yes.
Because I remember when I was a freshman football player, a horrible football player, for the record, folks. I jumped a snap on 2nd and 2, and I didn't get to play again for like 3 weeks, right? He does this in a absolute game-changing, season-changing scenario, which the Vikings would have scored on had he not jumped the snap. You just need to hit once from 2 yards, and he blew it. He absolutely blew it. That's a high school mistake. That is why I hate Jeremiah Searles. But we're not talking about him too much today because I could go on. Don't get me wrong. My hate for him goes on and on. But let's move on to, I guess, the notes that we kind of expected to talk about today. Face of the franchise is something I want to talk about. I had a great discussion with one of our YouTube commenters on the VT Roundtable. Very long comments. Excellent stuff. I can't remember the guy's name right now, but if you happen to listen to the About the Labor podcast, really enjoyed debating that with you. And now I want to talk about it with you, Sam, because I think this is an interesting thing. Face of the franchise. First of all, I guess, what does that mean to you, Sam? What do you like when you think of what a face of the franchise? What is the definition in your mind?
Yeah, well, to me, I guess I would say who I think of, the person I think of when I think of that team. So when I think of the New England Patriots, yeah, of course you think of Bill Belichick, but I would say Tom Brady's face comes into my mind. It's a very pleasant experience. It's a very aesthetically pleasing face. So that's like, now on the other on the other hand, when I think of the Green Bay Packers, Aaron Rodgers' ugly mug comes into my mind, and it's an awful thing. But that's when I think face of the franchise. That's what I think. I don't know if that's actually what it is.
Let me throw a little bit of a curveball here then. When you think of the Cleveland Browns, what do you think?
Honestly, Joe Thomas.
Okay, great. Okay, see, that's what I think of as well. So, I think
and that probably says more about the Browns.
To some degree, but at the same time, Joe Thomas is one hell of an example to live by in terms of offensive line play. So, I mean, not the most marketable dude in the world because nobody really watches or cares too much about offensive line on a relative NFL fan standpoint. But I mean...
Yeah, I would say his visibility on Twitter, especially in the last year, and kind of his antics, I think that's made him more visible and more like in people's minds. Probably, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be saying this if I wasn't. Obviously we know how great a player he is, but if he wasn't so visible socially, I don't know if I'd be saying this.
You think Cleveland tried to kick it into him, say something like, "Yo, Joe, you're the guy that's selling the tickets right now. Show the guy some personality."
Yeah, we need some help here, buddy. Anything we can get. The Manziel thing didn't work out, so let's figure it out. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, so we've kind of established a general base point on what kind of our take on what defines the face of the franchise. In my mind, it's the guy that sells the tickets. It's the guy that it's the pretty face. It's the sexiest player on the team. So to Sam's point, in New England, Tom Brady's obvious. But like you go down to like Jacksonville, you start thinking about. Is it Blake Bortles? No, it can't be. I mean, is it Leonard Fournette already? Is it one of these? Is it Miles Jack? Is it one of these guys in the defense? You don't really know. And the Vikings are in a very similar circumstance right now because Teddy Bridgewater's injured. Prior to the injury, I think it was very, very clear who the face of the franchise was. Whether you thought it was Adrian Peterson or not, I think you're probably wrong. Again, just my opinion, but I think Teddy Bridgewater's been the face for about 3 years. But now he's on the PUP list. I think he still has an argument for being the face of the franchise, but there's no clear-cut answer here. So, I guess, Sam, in your mind, when you think of the Vikings and you're trying to sell tickets, who's the guy that comes to mind for you?
Well, it's interesting because I think that the quarterback position by its nature just makes it predisposed to being the face of the franchise thing. Yeah. I think, like, if there is an option for the quarterback, like, if there's a suitable candidate, he'll automatically be. That's why when you say Jacksonville, it's like Bortles is the guy I think of.
Well, you think of like even like San Francisco last year. Who was the face of San Francisco? Colin Kaepernick.
Kaepernick. I mean, right? Absolutely.
You think the quarterback, if he's above par, he's basically the face of the franchise.
Right, but like you said, the Vikings are in this unique situation. I don't think it's Sam Bradford just because of how short everything's been and because he came into town essentially as a rental. Now, whether it'll turn out being that way or not, we don't quite know yet because we don't know what's going to happen with Bridgewater. But honestly, if you had to ask me about the Vikings, I'd say what I said, and I think some of us said on the roundtable. I didn't even bring this up, but someone said it was Mike Zimmer because I think that's the most visible presence on the team. And I think I'm saying this as a Vikings fan. Like what I'm saying is I think if I were an outside observer, I don't know if I would say it's Mike Zimmer. You know what I mean? Because we're so much more familiar with him because he's the coach of the Vikings.
And that's the interesting dynamic here. That's why we're having this discussion in the first place, because the guy that I was debating this with, his take was that it's Mike Zimmer and kind of the Zim Reapers. You know, the idea of Zimmer and his guys. Yeah. And while I don't disagree with that, I just think it's fundamentally difficult to name, first of all, a coach, and then also to name multiple players, because if you give, the example I give is 3 Deep. You think of 3 Deep, the iconic Jake Reed, Randy Moss, Chris Carter. Well, 15 years later, it's the dynamic duo. Nobody really remembers Jake Reed for what he was worth.
And it's a travesty.
It is a travesty.
In my opinion.
Absolutely. Very talented player. We just talked about that last week on the most underrated section. But my point here is that if you try to establish a set group of people, even the Purple People Eaters, you forget about Larson. You think about the obvious one, Eller, Page, those guys, but you always forget one. So there's not I think it's very difficult to identify a specific group. Applying this to the Vikings, you think Linville, Everson Griffin, Eric Kendricks, Anthony Barr, Xavier Rhodes, Harrison Smith. But as I'm saying this, someone's like, what about Danielle Hunter? What about Brian Robinson? What about Sharif Floyd? I mean, there's too much disparity there to name a group. So that's why I throw the group idea out. With the coach, it's a longevity issue for me. for guys like Bill Belichick, that he has earned basically never going to stop coaching the Patriots until he chooses to. So he can be the face. Mike Zimmer is, in some people's mind, he's on the hot seat right now. If the Vikings offensive, I mean, it's absurd. Don't get me wrong, but in some fans' minds, he's on the hot seat. If, for example, the offensive line doesn't pan out very well, he could be caught under fire a little bit here. And it's difficult to be the face of the franchise when you can be fired at any moment. That's my basis for why I don't like naming a coach. But at the same time, Zimmer is such a presence. And like you said, I think it'd be interesting to get a take from someone from, I don't know, D.C., Washington, D.C., that doesn't really care, whatever. Because I think he's iconic to us. And I think to some degree, he is. But you wouldn't drop a banner off the side of U.S. Bank Stadium with a big picture of Mike Zimmer trying to sell tickets.
Right,
and that to me is the face. The pretty guy is the one that's selling the tickets. Mike Zimmer is the brains, in my opinion. So
are you sticking with your original take that it's still Teddy Bridgewater despite his
See, I'm starting to lean, and I hope this drops some heads. I'm already leaning Dalvin Cook. And I know that's...
Whoa!
I know. It sounds absurd. It sounds ridiculous, but we're appealing to the masses here, folks. That's what the face of the franchise does. The guy that is your face is the guy that everyone knows, the guy that, the lanky kid that has never seen a football before in his life, he still has the Teddy Bridgewater jersey, right? You're appealing to this major group of people. Everyone knows who Dalvin Cook is. Everyone knows what he's coming in to do. Everyone knows whose successor he is. I think you can make a very good argument that he's one of the most marketable players on the Vikings already. But then you got to think about guys like Harrison Smith. That's the guy that, for me, I personally would pick Harrison Smith because he embodies everything that this Vikings defense is, and this is a defensive team. But he's not vocal enough. He's not a very marketable presence.
It's tough to say a safety is the face of your franchise.
Exactly, unless it's Sean Taylor. So, I mean...
Yeah, right, or Ronnie Lott, or Ed Reed, or something like that.
You got to talk, or you got to be more... First of all, honestly, and, this is kind of unfair, but you got to kind of not be white. It's difficult for people just... And the reason why I say it, and I don't think that's unfair, because I think that a lot of people who don't know who Harrison Smith is, their initial reaction is, who the hell is this white guy? Where's he coming from? Right?
The position of defensive back is less white than, say, quarterback or something like that.
Exactly. So, I mean, I just think that, in my mind, he's my face. Harrison Smith embodies everything. But in terms of the masses, I don't know. It's very difficult to actually define one specific guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can approach this conversation from two different ways. Like, you can say, who would we choose to be the face of the franchise based on who should be? You know what I mean? Like, Harrison Smith has a very good case for that.
Everson Griffin, maybe?
Yeah, right. Everson Griffin's
more personal guy, something like that.
But then you could also, if you're saying who is the face of the franchise, you're basically trying to get a barometer of who the masses, locally and nationally,
the eggs on Twitter.
Yeah, think of when they think of the Vikings most. And I just think this is a really hard team to do that on right now, because it's not because they don't have good players. It's because, like you said, there are so many good players on the defense. And because Bradford, while I'm a Bradford fan and borderline Bradford apologist a lot of the time, he's just not a really marketable guy.
And he gets hurt by Teddy Bridgewater unfairly. The dynamic hurts his marketability because people see a picture of Sam Bradford and they think Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's unfair to Sam, but that's just how it is.
Right, and Teddy was just that he was tailor-made to be the face of a franchise, and hopefully still will be at some point.
Right.
But I don't know. Right now, it's can you say there's none?
Okay. Here's what we're gonna do, because I think this is something that could go on for a long time. Give me one. Give me a concrete answer that you think that you're trying to sell this to someone. You're trying to sell this to. I don't know, think of the best Vikings mind you can think of. Trying to sell a player, which one do you pick as the guy that, in your mind, is not only marketable, but also is a weapon on this team?
So it's got to be a player. I can't say Mike Zimmer.
I mean, you can say Mike Zimmer.
Is that a cop-out?
I don't think it's a cop-out.
I'll come up with a player. Can you give me yours while I think of mine?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I'm going to stick with Harrison Smith, and I'm sticking with this knowing that I know his quote flaws as a marketable player, but he's just so dynamic, and this is something you're gonna have to bear with me here on a little bit, but his under the radar presence is kind of an inside joke for Vikings fans, right? We think it's hilarious that you guys don't know how good this guy is. Right. You know, you guys all say it's Earl Thomas, it's Cam Chancellor, nobody else. That's it. And you know why? It's because those two guys have played in 2 Super Bowls. Yeah. You know those guys. You want to talk about a wrecking ball, a guy that is destructive in every possible way that a football player on the defensive side of the ball can do? Sacks, pressures, tackles for losses, interceptions, touchdowns, forced fumbles, being in the right spot at the right time, recognition, blowing stuff up just on the other side of the field just because of his presence. He is what Mike Zimmer's defense embodies: versatility, dynamic athletes, and 150% all the time dog mentality. That's why he's my face of the franchise.
Yeah, it's that you make a very good case. And if I were going to answer after that, I'd probably say Harrison Smith. But just for the sake of this segment, sure, I'll pick someone else. I'll pick a guy that plays very close to Harrison Smith, Xavier Rhodes, I'd say, because he's one of the best players on a very good defense, what will hopefully be a very good defense. He plays a position that's sort of in the limelight with cornerback.
There's been a lot more important in the league too as the passing.
Absolutely, it's a very important position. People know what it is. People essentially understand this position better than some positions on the defensive line, for example. He has a coolish name, Xavier Rhodes. There's the Rhodes closed thing. He does have a marquee moment on national television against Odell Beckham Jr.
He's got the Arizona pick 6 that everyone knows about. He's a top 100 NFL Network player.
And yeah, he's turning into hopefully one of the premier shutdown corners in the NFL. And I feel like shutdown corner is one of those sort of marquee positions, like that center field safety.
You pay those guys $15 million to take someone out of the game.
Absolutely. So I guess if I had to pick a player, I'd go with Xavier Rhodes.
And I think that's a good pick, especially right now, because I think we've seen Xavier Rhodes become a little bit more vocal, and you kind of see the swagger showing up a little bit more lately. The FSU mentality, as I like to say, the Deion Sanders in him. I really like how Xavier Rhodes has developed over the last 365, because now he's picking off passes, he's turning him, bringing him to the house, and literally that's the difference between people knowing him and just having no clue who this guy is, but understanding that if he's lined up against your guy, you're in a little bit of trouble here. So I think that he's kind of on the rise, and this could be a potential candidate, because I think you could make a very strong argument that he was the best cornerback in the NFL last year.
You really could, yeah.
Tackling efficiency, I mean...
Yeah. Like you said,
turnovers.
Too, I mean, you can defend passes all day long and just have airtight coverage, but until you're making plays on the ball, people don't really know who you are outside your local market. And that's what he's starting to do. And so I think that's really exciting because, number one, that means more people will know who he is. But number two, that changes games. Pick six, stuff like that.
The Arizona game, he might have literally, for the time being, saved the Vikings season with that pick six before halftime. That 108-yard or whatever, that could have easily been a John Brown touchdown.
Those are the things that the Vikings defense, I think, during the second half of the season was missing, that they had in such wealth in the first half and why they were winning so much, turnovers and scoring on defense. And even if you can play sound fundamental defense, if you're not forcing turnovers at all and not getting to the quarterback, you're going to have a hard time like we saw.
Absolutely. And I just to kind of round out this take on Rhodes, think about the New York Giants when he took Odell Beckham out of the equation and how different that team looked without Odell Beckham being able to kind of wreak havoc in the Vikings secondary. The cornerback position has become very influential on how a game turns out. So I like that take, and honestly, if I'm not picking Harrison Smith, it's got to be someone on the defense. If I'm not picking Harrison Smith, Xavier Rhodes, Everson Griffin are probably my 2A and 2B there. Sure. So this is a discussion that, again, it can go on forever. Hopefully you guys have an interesting take. Leave that in the comments. Tweet at us. Tell us we're wrong. I'll debate with you all day long. So let's do it. Next segment here. You're going to hear me use these two words in front of a phrase for about 6 more weeks. Way too early predictions here. What we're going to do here is we're going to start with the Vikings record, and we'll kind of see how it develops from there. Obviously, it's May 17th right now. when we're making these projections, these are informed takes, but it's informed in May. Mike Zimmer can't project the Vikings record right now because someone could get hurt, someone could retire. A lot can change. So, way too early? Absolutely. Never a wrong time to start thinking about the 2017 season, though. Sam, what do you think for the Vikes this year? What's the record looking like? Where do you see them finishing the division? Your general take on that?
Sure. For the Vikings record, here's what I got. It's kind of middle of the road, so it's kind of lame. But my honest opinion, I think it's going to be a 10-6 season because I do think Sam Bradford's going to miss a little time, maybe a couple games, and I think the defense is going to improve to a more consistent level. So while they're not, scoring 2 touchdowns every game, I think they're going to level it out so they don't have that drop-off like they did last year, and that'll keep them in most games. I think they're going to win a lot of games. I think they're going to be a good team, probably drop a few close ones because as you play defensive games, you have the opportunity to do so. And they're the Vikings, absolutely. I can't in
your favorite take of all time.
Yes, I cannot.
It's
really
very
don't.
important to bring that up every so often just so people remember you still are a Vikings fan.
Yeah, we just got to all just relax and bring this down to brass tacks, which is really, it's still the Vikings, and we know they're going to screw some things up. But I think it's a very talented team. I think 10-6 is a reasonable. Win the North? No, I got 10-6 at a wild card, and that's just because I do think Green Bay is going to be very good. And I'm hesitant about picking a division championship. I don't know. It just feels like that's asking for trouble. So that's kind of my take.
It's fun to do this at this point in the year because if we're right, we get to brag about it. But if we're wrong, people just kind of forget about it and throw it out.
Yeah, exactly. What do you got?
I have, and this sucks because I have 10-6 too. That's exactly nice. That's what I've been saying for about two weeks here. And here's my simple take on that. Obviously, there's a very long explanation as well, but I think the Vikings defense is going to be a top 5 caliber unit again, and I think that they're going to see progress, even further progress. I believe they were like top 4. I think they're 4 or something like that in total defense last year. I can see them making a leap to number 1 this year.
And because as good as they were, it almost didn't seem like top 4. Yeah, absolutely. It seemed like they underachieved a lot of it.
You take out that Indianapolis Colts game, and all of a sudden they're number 2 in total defense. That absolute blowout game. You take out the Green Bay and the Colts game, I believe they're number 1. So
probably.
There's a lot of semantics and a lot of crap that we can throw out to confirm our bias and whatnot. But what I see is a top 5 defense, and I really, really think this is going to be a top 15-ish offense. I think that Sam Bradford's going to throw for about 3,200 to 3,500 yards. I think that I think they have so many weapons right now where I think you could see guys I think you could see Bucky Hodges catch 3 touchdowns. I think you could see Michael Floyd catch 5 touchdowns. Diggs will probably catch 2, 3, 4. Thielen could catch 5, 6, 7. I mean, the Vikings have enough in their arsenal now, strictly from a passing standpoint, that they could end up having 4 or 5 guys that have 4 to 5 touchdowns. And that's a lot of production. You can't shut 5 guys down with 1 cornerback. So
no.
I like that.
We're not even talking about Kyle Rudolph there.
Right.
Kyle Rudolph usually have 6, 7 touchdowns.
Exactly. So, and I didn't even bring up the running game. And the running game is going to be exponentially improved, at least in my opinion, assuming Dalvin Cook doesn't get in a bar fight between now and September. I like his ability to be a guy that rushes for about 1,200 yards and 5, 6, 7 touchdowns. I think he's a strong offensive rookie of the year candidate, put it that way. Latavius Murray is a guy that can score from 1 yard out. And I know, Sam, you love this because Matt Asiata couldn't do it last year. You've talked about this before. Murray's going to get it done from short yardage. And McKinnon finally gets to play that role again where it actually makes sense for his skill set. Putting him in space as the H-back, swinging him on outside passes, not jamming him up between the tackles with that tiny frame and kind of... I know he's strong, but he's not as strong as a nose tackle. He's not
everybody's strong in the NFL. Yeah, exactly. He needs to be in space.
Exactly, and he's so dynamic when he gets in space. So, long story short here, I see a lot of possibilities for this offense to really take some big steps forward. That kind of hinges on Riley Reif. He plays 16 games well, gives Sam Bradford an extra second in the pocket. That's a huge dip. You could see 25, 26 touchdowns out of Bradford this year. I don't think that that's too absurd with all these weapons in his arsenal now. So, at this point, top 15-ish offense, top 5 defense, I think that aligns well with 10 or 11 wins, which I'm with you again here. I don't think it wins the division because I think Detroit and Green Bay will both be very good teams. I think the NFC North could easily produce 3 playoff teams this year because I really do think that Detroit improved that much. They just have to kind of not choke on their self like they do every single year around week 16, week 17. So you kind of always count on them for that. Vikings choke in the playoffs. Detroit chokes before the playoffs.
Yes.
Green Bay, I guess they kind of choke in the NFC North NFC Championship.
That's true. They do. I hope Detroit makes the playoffs, man. I really do.
You almost root for Detroit, you know?
I really do. I mean, every time they're not playing the Vikings, I really do. We complain about our lot in life as Vikings fans, but man, being a Lions fan, I would love to see.
With all the talent they've had too.
Yeah, I like Matt Stafford. I would love to see them.
Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson within 15 years, and you make one postseason. That's two
very good
guys that you'll never see that talent ever again, and they did nothing with it.
Like they both could be. Like you could make a case for both as the most talented player to ever play the position.
Absolutely. And honestly, even with Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson right neck and neck with Randy Moss in terms of bare bones talent. Right there. Absolutely. Barry Sanders, I mean, dude, he might be the most talented running back of all time. Right. You remember checking out those games, what he was able to do with that offensive line. We're getting way off base here, but you know what I'm saying.
I do.
So, point being, 10-6 again for the Vikings. Playoff team. I think that Sam Bradford, I think this is also a year for Sam Bradford where he has to win over this fan base. He has to do this, and this will kind of help him in his case to be the face of the franchise as well. And in order to do that, he's got to make the postseason. I don't care if it's an NFC North championship. I don't care if it's a wild card spot. He's got to do something because this team is just too loaded with talent. I mean, the depth is absurd. We just talked about the defensive tackle spot. There's 6 different guys on there that can get 2, 3, 4, 5 sacks. So, next thing here in terms of our early predictions here. Who is the number 1 receiver in terms of not the go-to guy, but the guy that racks up the most yardage? And are we finally going to break that 1,000-yard streak this year? Is someone finally going to do it? First one since Sidney Rice in 2009. Yeah,
I think yes. And honestly, there's maybe recency bias, but I think it's Adam Thielen. I think he's the guy to do it.
Great take,
his chemistry with Sam Bradford last year was so good that I just think that he's becoming a very well-rounded receiver. I mean, he's got good speed. He's a great route runner, and he can
the best on the team. Other than
he can make plays.
He's becoming more athletic.
He's
becoming more kind of crazy, like the spectacular catch receiver. The guy like Calvin Johnson, where you just kind of reach back and he just finds the ball. Thielen was doing that kind of thing. Remember the touchdown he scored against Arizona, where he kind of contorted his body like around the cornerback. I think
what we're seeing is he's so good technically and becoming such a part of this offense. We're able to see that athleticism more that may have been there. But, he was an undrafted free agent, so it's just he had to work his way in. I would say I'm also a big Stephon Diggs fan, and I would say Diggs is a 1,000-yard receiver, but it's just the injuries with him. I don't know that he can stay on the field for a whole season, so that remains to be seen. Yeah.
So I don't think that the Vikings are going to get a 1,000-yard receiver this year. I think that the streak's going to continue. But I think that's a good thing. And here's why that's a good thing is because I think they're going to have like 3 guys that have 900 yards. I think that Mike Floyd could easily have 750, 800 yards. I think that Stephon Diggs, if he plays 16 games, he's going to catch 105 balls for very, very close to 1,000 yards. Like Sam said, Thielen could easily do it. He's essentially a catch away from doing it last season. I don't know what type of real potential Rudolph has is in terms of being a yardage receiver, but he got around 700 last year. Good chemistry with Bradford, over the middle target with a lot of guys working around him. But simple point here is I think that number 1 receiver, the guy that's going to be the most dynamic, the most talented player is going to be Stephon Diggs again this year. I think that I still have the concerns with his durability, and I really would like to find a way to kind of quantify how his hamstring injuries repeatedly are affecting his gameplay, because I really think this durability stuff is clouding his ability to break out into stardom. Because he's essentially, last year he was one game away from being, 5 touchdowns, 1,000-yard receiver, and dude, he shines in the biggest moments. 181 yards against Green Bay. I mean, that is a superstar. You're looking for a face of the franchise. You keep doing that against Green Bay. I mean, that guy's got swag for days, too. So, something to think about, food for thought there. So, my answer here is Stefan Diggs, no 1,000-yard receiver. We're going to get into that decade mark. Decade without a 1,000-yard receiver in the most pass-happy, time period in NFL history, and the Vikings can't get 1,000 yards.
Isn't that crazy? That speaks to quarterback woes. I mean, come on.
That's Gus Frerotte. I mean,
and Gus Frerotte rescued that season from the arms of Tavares Jackson. That's how bad things were. We had to call him Gus Frerotte.
That's never a good sign. You're not going to get 1,000 yards with Gus Frerotte as your quarterback.
Right.
Simple take there. Last thing here in terms of our way too early projections. Dalvin Cook is the obvious rookie here that's going to be the standout guy. Give me one of these guys. You can't pick Elflein or Cook. One of the other rookies, so you're looking at Rodney Adams, Stacy Coley, Bucky Hodges, Io, Elijah Lee potentially. Give me the best rookie performer. I mean, if it could just be a guy that stands out in special teams like Ben Gideon if you want. Who's going to be other than Cook, other than Elflein, who is the most dynamic rookie, assuming there is another one?
Sure. Yeah, okay. You're going to think I'm crazy. But I've thought about this a lot, and I don't know if dynamic is the right word, but I really think we're going to see some production out of Ben Gideon. Special teams, yes, but I really think one of the reasons they overdrafted him compared to what we thought and a lot of people thought, I think they're trying to replace that Chad Greenway spot and that third linebacker spot, and I think he has a shot to be the guy and might even have the inside track to be the guy. And so I think that we could see, a good, I don't know what, 35, 40 tackles out of him on defense, some special teams plays, stuff like that. Just good, solid. Like I can envision being like Ben Gideon. Oh, okay, here and there. He won't be on the field a ton. Might not be on the field at all.
25 snap type guy, some in the fourth, exactly. In the base D guy.
But I can see him making an impact where a lot of us weren't expecting it. Also, sure. I think that don't want to piss on any parades, but one of my predictions was Bucky Hodges fewer than 10 catches, simply because he's so raw. I know we're very excited. I'm still excited. Sure. But in his rookie season, he's so raw. He's not a good route runner, not an especially natural receiver.
Yeah,
even
he's a body catcher at times.
Right.
He doesn't always use the length, Yeah.
And they've just shown such a hesitance to get rookies on the field if they're not close to ready. Laquan Treadwell was so much more polished coming out of college. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. He couldn't get on the field. So I think we're all real excited about Bucky Hodges, but we might need to temper that a little bit. I don't know.
Hey, that's fair. And you know what? I mean, I'm listening to you because I have been one of the guys that has been preaching Bucky Hodges since this moment they picked him. Because
you're a big.
I am a big. He's my Mr. Mankato pick. I'm picking that in May. So, I'm going to go with the guy that I think is going to be the most impactful, and I'm going to go a little bit crazy too because I think that you went out on a limb, and I'm going to go out on a similar limb. I'm going to say it's Elijah Lee. And first of all, number one, why that's crazy is because that guy's not even a lock to make the 53. Right. I think not only is he going to make the 53, he's going to be a special team standout, and I think that he's going to kind of slowly emerge as a guy that you'll start seeing on pass guarantee situations, the 3rd and longs, the 3rd and 8 to 3rd and 15 situations. Elijah Lee is built for that. I really think that the difference between him being on the 53 and him being a potential impact guy is about 10 pounds and just recognition and just being able to be a more consistent tackler. If he can shore up those things in 3 months, and at the NFL level, they get through that kind of stuff quick. It could easily happen. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say it's Elijah Lee. And I want to do one more here. Give me your breakout candidate. The guy that kind of, maybe he's kind of been falling apart. Maybe he's Laquan Treadwell, he didn't show up at all. Maybe it's Stefan Diggs and it's the durability stuff. Maybe it's Trey Waynes. Who is your guy this year that you're hitching your wagon to?
Okay, that's interesting. I do think I'm going to qualify this a little bit, but I'm actually going to give you an answer too. I do think Laquan Treadwell will breakout. I mean, anything more than what he did last year could be qualified as a breakout, but I'm not ready to give on.
In terms of, like, what do you think for Treadwell?
I think Treadwell could have 30 catches and 2 touchdowns. Something like that, where he's working his way in. Yeah, exactly. That's progress, and we're seeing something from Laquan Treadwell. But honestly, I think, and this is when I was just jotting stuff down, I think that Latavius Murray will lead Vikings backs in all-purpose yards. And the reason I say that is because, number one, they signed him to be at least in that rotation, and then of course, things changed when they drafted Dalvin Cook. But it's just their hesitance to put rookies on the field. We've seen it with almost everybody except Anthony Barr early on in the season. They just don't like doing it. Even if you're Trey Waynes, if you're Laquan Treadwell, it doesn't really matter how high you're drafted. And I think what they're going to do with Cook is ease him on the field a little bit. I'm a little worried about the fumbling thing. I think Cook will produce for this team and will end up having a nice season. But I see Latavius Murray getting a lot of touches, especially early, frustrating fans because he's not going to be super exciting. But I do see
chunking up the 4 and 5 yards and blowing out the 80s. Yeah,
exactly. And even those short passes too, those 5-7 yard passes,
those
stuff
matter.
Like that.
Those matter.
Totally matter. So that might be my guy. I think we're going to see a little more out of Latavius Murray in terms of a statistical production than we might be expecting.
I think that's a great take here because Dalvin Cook is basically one fumble away from going to the Zimmer doghouse.
That is a real thing.
Let's say Dalvin Cook fumbles on his 6th carry. You might not see him for 3 weeks. You know what I'm saying? So I think that Murray's a good pick. I'm going to hold strong on this one with Trey Waynes being my breakout star. This is the guy that I've been talking about since about week 17 last year. I started talking about I think that he's really ready to go. It's time to take the training wheels off. It's year 3. You're number 11 overall pick. Mike Zimmer, it's time. I get that Terrence Newman has been good, but this guy he's starting to prove that he had 3 picks last year. Trey Waynes has been an effective player in his role basically since his rookie year. After he got over the handsy stuff, he's been a pretty talented, consistent player. So Trey Waynes is my guy. I hopefully will be doing a film breakdown to back that up on VT. So look forward to that at some point over the next 6 weeks here. That's my guy for sure.
I like that pick too because, like you said, I just think everything is set up to have.
It's perfect. He's got Rhodes on his opposite side. He's covering number 2s.
There's almost no excuse not for Trey Waynes. He has the talent. This will be his 3rd year. He's ready to take that step forward. Absolutely.
Okay, so I was gonna try to fit a Twitter question in here, but it looks like we're kind of short on time, and we have.
Sorry, Damon.
We not only have a take 5 today, but we also have a few more. So let's start with the take 5, and this is Sam's pick, and it's great because it's just so simple, and I think everyone can identify it. Your top 5 favorite Vikings of all time, Sam. Just go straight top to bottom.
Let's do it. Okay. Well, I'll start with number 5 and work to build hype up to number 1. So number 5 is I love Ham, but Ham applies to the defensive side of the ball too. Sure. So Pat Williams is my 5th favorite Viking of all time.
That's great.
Real big, lovable guy. Yeah, beefy, and was the key to that defense, I dare say, one of the better defenses in team history, if not the best defense. NFC title game, he was there, and just a great player, held everything together, unsung guy. Big fan of his. Number 4, Michael Bennett. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but Michael Bennett was drafted out of Wisconsin right around the time I was really, really getting into the Vikings. I was reading the Lindy's draft preview magazines and all that stuff. I got super excited about Michael Bennett, and they ended up drafting him. And he was actually a pretty good player for a number of years for them. Speedy guy. He was the lead back. Never a Robert Smith, never an Adrian Peterson, but good guy. And like I said, he was very nice to me in training camp, and I appreciated that. Number 3, Jared Allen. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory. Awesome player, hilarious guy. Loved watching him play the game and loved watching him chase that sack record. And he had a radio show with Mike Mussman called Vikings Territory where they did it. No, was it Vikings Territory? No, Vikings Country. I'm sorry, that'd be weird. Vikings country, and those guys just for a half hour or an hour, what it is, they talked about whatever they wanted, and it was absolutely hilarious. Jared Allen, great personality, tremendous player, loved him. Number 2, David Dixon.
Ooh, this is an interesting one.
David Dixon. I have always had a soft spot in my heart for this man. Good player, yes, but just lovable, round Samoan or wherever he's from originally. Was a swimmer in college, a mountain of a man. I always love, my brothers and I always used to joke about this, when they do the official NFL headshot and the guy's face barely fit in the screen. It was just such a delight to bring to us. And when a guy like David Dixon, this soft-spoken, gentle giant, can hold court on the Vikings offensive line for many years, you win me over, buddy. David Dixon, I hope you're watching right now.
That's the first time his name's been said in a really long time.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And number 1, we'll see if Warwiss pays attention to these because we'll hear from him. This is weird, and I promise you I'm not trying to do a contrarian take. I am prone to those like a lot of us. But when I sat down and thought about this question, my honest answer to my favorite Viking of all time, Brett Favre. And that's because I know it wasn't a longevity thing. He only had one good season. That single season brought me more joy than any season in Vikings history. I waited so long. I mean, we had Dante and then nobody else.
And just the build-up to it, too, with them flying down to get him.
Flying down to get him, riding in.
Dude, it's literally a movie.
Saving the season. It really should be. I mean, you couldn't write this. And I was living in Dallas, Texas at the time, and if you'll remember, that divisional game was against the Cowboys, who were very hot, and everybody thought they were just going to roll over the Vikings, and they were just the best thing in the world. Vikings ran up the score on them with a 4th down touchdown, Brett Favre to Asante Shenko. It was probably the greatest week of my life, football speaking. And, no matter how it ended, I know Adam Warris didn't like Favre as a Viking, didn't like him as a Packer. I don't understand that. I guess I don't hate players that much just because they play for different teams, but loved that season. So that's my number 1.
Okay, so it's gonna be interesting because I think we're kind of gonna end up ramping up to the exact same premise. I think here. Number 5 for me. This is gonna come way out of right field. Kelly Campbell, wide receiver, 2004 to 2007-ish. He was the number 1 for about 2 weeks until Travis Taylor, if you remember him. Kelly Campbell was a guy for about 6 weeks, and it was great. I really enjoyed him. I thought he was a really cool dude, too, and that's kind of why I latched on to him as a 8th grader. I thought he was just a cool dude, and I just loved him. I put him in as the number 1 receiver on my Madden teams. I loved Kelly Campbell growing up. He's my number 5. Number 4, my list is kind of interesting because it's a mix of comedy and just awesome talent. Number 4, Jermaine Wiggins. Oh. I'm literally going to cut it off after this. His touchdown dance, man, hilarious. Literally laugh out loud funny when he would just drop to the ground, kind of, and just... I mean, the guy was just a character. He was
the least athletic-looking athlete I've ever seen in my life.
And isn't that the truth?
It was awesome.
And yet he could still score. He could still block. He stuck around the NFL for a while. He was a great dude. Sticking with him, getting wiggy with it all day, every day. He's my number 4. Number 3, this is where we start to get a little bit interesting here. Antoine Winfield. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. Like Jared Allen, you said, this guy comes over from Buffalo, and he literally becomes the epitome of what you want your defensive backs to be, especially in Minnesota. You think about the defensive back history in Minnesota. You've got guys like Paul Krause all the way back when. You've got, Xavier Rhodes is filling it now. You got Harrison Smith. You push it back to Brian Williams back in the early 2000s-ish. There's some, cornerback and safety has been a strength, and Antoine Winfield is, if he's not the best Vikings cornerback of all time, he's surely number 2, and he's definitively the best tackler, because he might be the best tackling cornerback I've ever seen in my entire life. Absolutely. And I love cornerbacks that can tackle, because it's not a requirement, but some guys love the game so much they learn how to do it. It's another reason why I love Xavier Rhodes. Winfield was just a joy to watch, and I loved watching him go up against guys like Antonio Freeman, who is one of my least favorite players of all time. If you remember him, he's the guy that roll around on the ground, touchdown against the Vikings. Hate that dude. But I loved those matchups. Number 3 for me, Antoine Winfield. And this is where we're going to start getting into that 2009 team. Number 2 for me, And it's kind of, I think this is kind of obvious to some degree, but it's Adrian Peterson. And that's going to kind of, I feel like it should be an expectation that he would be high on this list, but at this current point in his life, he's just not, like, his perception in Minnesota isn't good. But remember 2007, remember 2008, 2009, like, it's vividly in my mind when he threw that just defenseless defensive back in Cleveland week 1 and really set the tone for that 2009 season. When I say throw, I literally mean one arm, get out of my way, house. That was the Adrian Peterson that I fell in love with. And yes, I got sick of his antics too over the last couple of years. I have been complaining about him on this podcast for about 7 months, but he still stands as one of my favorites of all time because he made my senior year of high school unbelievable. And next to my number 1, he was one of my absolute favorite guys to watch growing up. He's a reason why I love football. He deserves to be in that number 2 spot. And number 1 for me, I've said this before, so it might not come out. Some of you guys have heard me say this before, so it might not be as shocking, but people always kind of give me the head nod on this one, like, what the hell? Sidney Rice is my favorite player of all time.
I wondered if you're going there. I love it.
Absolutely love Sidney Rice. And you talk about that Dallas Cowboys game, 3 touchdowns in his first postseason game of all time. I honestly think he earned his Seattle contract off of, like, that span of, like, week 15 to the postseason where he was unstoppable. Him and Favre had the arm strength to fit it into tight windows and to get the ball up into him. And it was the 1 year. And man, I just wish he could have stayed healthy for his entire career because he was such a joy to watch in the red zone, short yardage catches, one-on-one. I mean, coming out of South Carolina as a second-round pick, I didn't expect a ton, especially because we were expecting so much out of Adrian Peterson, the same class. But man, that guy really stepped up and made that 2009 season, like Sam said, the best 3 or 4 month span of my football fandom. And if I trace my, the reason why I'm here talking to Sam about football now, it's because of guys like Sidney Rice, and that's why he's my number 1 on this list for this Take 5 segment.
Tremendous. That's great because mine was so we're talking about the same season.
Exactly.
We're talking about guys who only really had one real good season in purple. Yep. And Sidney Rice was Favre's favorite receiver. He
one
loved
shining moment, man. That's all it takes. That's really all it takes.
I just remember he'd throw it up down that sideline to Sidney Rice again and again and again. He'd just say, they caught him on mic saying they can't cover.
It was the type of thing where they were like saying, Brett would literally just be like, all right, make him stop you. Until they stop you, I'm just going to keep throwing it. And he'd catch 8-9 balls before they start thinking, all right, we got to throw some over the top. We got to get some help because this guy's just beating us all day. Love Sidney Rice. That concludes the Take 5 segment here. And because we're very short on time, this is going to be a very simple one. I'm calling this segment, and this is special to Sam because I want to exploit Sam's personality, his comedy, just the enjoyment that I get from when he gets amped up about something. I'm calling this segment the Have a Few More because Take 5, you're going to have a few more now. Give me, and this is something that I think it's actually pretty relevant right now because of how social media has been lately. I want you to tell me, we'll say, give me your 2 biggest Twitter pet peeves.
Okay.
Things that really bother you on Twitter.com.
Yes. All right. Here we go. Number 1, it's hard to just pick 2, but I can do it. Number 1, quote tweeting everything. Basically, every response to someone, you quote tweet. And the implication here is, if I'm having this conversation, everybody's having it. They need to see the hot takes that I'm dropping in this conversation. So I'm quote tweeting this whole thing, and I will not respond directly to someone.
It's so true.
And then number 2 is never logging off. There are people that are on Twitter.com all day, every day. Go outside, for the love of God. If you respond to everything within 22 seconds, you need to examine your life. I enjoy Twitter a lot, but sometimes, folks, we need to take a walk. We need to experience the world around us. We need to log off, never logging off. And if I may, one bonus.
Oh, go Kevin. For it. Absolutely.
Kevin.
Okay, so since you did 3, I feel obligated to do 3. So I'm going to start with number 3, and this is very simple, and I think you guys are going to understand it, despite it being so simple. Just people being weird. Twitter can be very, very weird, and it makes me feel very odd, especially during like Trump season when people really started getting kind of like, it just, the face says it all, you know what I'm saying? Just being weird on Twitter. There's too many weird people. That bugs me. Number 2 is quote tweeting. I can't. I have tried to be a quote tweet guy in order to kind of build my Twitter presence up a little bit now that I'm doing this, full time and trying to, create clicks for Vikings Territory. I can't do it because I just hate it. I feel like a moron when I feel like every single time I quote tweet someone, it's like saying, hey, look at how, see how stupid this guy is? Now check out what I have to say. It's better than what he said. Yeah. It feels like that every single time, even if it's not like that at all. I hate quote tweeting. Right. That's number 2 for me.
Well, let's be clear. That's the version we're talking about. If you like quote tweet an article with your take on it or something, that's cool. But when it's the responses to people all the time. That's what we're talking about.
When you're literally kind of objectifying someone and literally like someone asks you, like if you're answering a question that's relevant to the rest, I mean, I have a tendency to quote tweet stuff like that too. Like, but if someone says something to you like, I think that Trey Waynes is the best cornerback on this team, and I mean, I think we can make this very obvious. Xavier Rhodes is clearly the best cornerback, but someone says that, and for me to be like, all right, I'm going to quote tweet this, and I'll be like, nah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's just like, you're such a dick.
That's exactly what happened.
I cannot stand that. I absolutely cannot stand that mentality. So that's only number 2 here, right?
Yep.
And number 1 for me is the people that, and this might be mean, I'm not sure, but it's the people that literally like, it's not just the people, it's the idea of having your social life be twitter.com. And I think that's kind of, I think people can kind of understand that, but I'll explain it a bit. If you treat Twitter like you would a bar, like you're going on Twitter at 8 o'clock on a Friday night to hang out with the people that you've made relationships with, I'm not saying that you suck, but you kind of suck. Like Sam said, go outside. You need to go to a bar, go hang out with. What bothers me about Twitter is because it's basically a big bar. That's essentially what it is, where everyone can kind of hear it. If they may not be listening, aka they might not see your tweet.
Right.
But it's not a bar, because at a bar you don't say the stupid stuff that you say on Twitter. Like, nobody's going to send Michael Floyd a picture of his jersey that says .08 on back to his face at a bar.
Will not happen.
That wouldn't go over well. Someone's going to punch you. It wouldn't be Mike. It'd be the fall guy, Chris Carter. But you know what I'm saying? I just can't stand people that have literally... not people. I cannot stand the idea of creating a social life based literally on Twitter. And that kind of falls back on the whole sign-off at some point. I'm on Twitter a lot. Yeah. You guys know that. But, like, there's a reason I'm not around on the weekends. There's a reason why you get one tweet over the course of 3 days. It's because I want to go out and hang out with my friends. I think you guys should too. That's what bugs me about Twitter. That is my number 1. And that is the end of your Have a Few More segment. And that is the end of this show. And man, it went by quick, and I think we kind of racked up some minutes here for sure. Sam, any final thoughts before I take us out here?
No, it was a pleasure to be on. It was a lot of fun, actually. I had a really, really good time filling in for Drew. And your prayers for Drew and his skin condition, and let's hope he's back here next week.
Turn this into a thing. Pray for Drew.
Pray for Drew.
Hashtag it on Twitter. Let's start at least get a Minneapolis trend going. Pray for Drew. Who hopefully will be back for episode 67. But that's the end of episode 66. You know, he's sitting right in front of me, but thanks to Sam for joining us. Like he just said, I had a lot of fun on this show. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed it as well. Sam will be back at some point here because I simply cannot get enough of his personality. So hopefully you will feel the same way. Follow him on Twitter. The handle?
Noom Salmon. Just search Sam Newman.
And you can follow me at Robert Reidell, as always, Reidell. And make sure to follow the Twitter account for the podcast at Vikings ATL Pod, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Vikings Territory, iHeartRadio. You guys know all this stuff, but I have to say it every week anyways. And that about wraps it up, so we will see you guys next Tuesday. Thanks for listening.